guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. What are we here to talk about today? The Replacement Killers. It's upside down and it's backwards. Hell yeah. So Chow Yun-fat, Mira Sorvino. This film was directed by Antoine Fuqua, you know, who directed Training Day and Brooklyn's Finest and Southpaw and The Equalizer and so many other great films. And this movie was released in 1998. It also stars Michael Rooker, who is fantastic in this movie. Til Schweiger is in it. Danny Trejo is in it. Kenneth Tsang is in it, who is in A Better Tomorrow. He's in some Wong Fei-hung movies going all the way back to like the 60s. He's been in so many movies. And so it's really cool to see him in this film. And so what I'm going to do is like a two-part thing. I'm going to kind of review this DVD a little bit, and then I'm also going to talk about the movie. And I haven't seen this movie since like, I think 2003 was the last time I saw it. So I watched this when I was living in Tokyo. A friend of mine really liked this movie and one of the Jet Li movies. I can't honestly remember which one. But we watched both of them together in his room in Tokyo, and that was the last time I saw this movie. So there's an extended cut of this. I have the Blu-ray in the mail. I found it on eBay for like $8. I'm going to do a different video where I compare DVD to Blu-ray and extended cut to regular cut. In this video, I'm just going to talk about what was the theatrical cut at the time. This is the special edition DVD, and there's a fair amount of bonus features on here. And just to kind of show you the disc, and the insert just is like one of those classic kind of like, you know, there's like the names of the chapters and stuff, and there's some photos from the film. And so I guess I'll talk about the DVD kind of briefly first. It looks good for a DVD. It's definitely like a high quality DVD release. I watched it on a 59-inch television, and you can definitely tell that it's not HD, you know, like in the blacks especially, there's like pixelating and colors are kind of washed out. It's kind of hard to see things in the shadows and stuff like that. I threw it on my computer and it looks fine. So on a smaller screen, it holds up really well, but on a big screen like that, it really kind of starts to fall apart a little bit. But there's a lot of bonus stuff on here, which is super cool. First of all, you have audio in English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. You have subtitles in English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Chinese, Thai, and Korean. So that's really cool. There is an HBO making of called Where the Action Is, and then there's a featurette called Chow Yun-fat Goes to Hollywood. Together, those two things are about 30 minutes long, and they are super, super cool. You have Chow Yun-fat, Mira Sorvino, Antoine Fuqua doing interviews. There's tons of behind-the-scenes footage. And lots of information about the making of the film and about Chow Yun-fat's transition from Hollywood to Hong Kong to Hollywood. And it gives you like a lot of context for that era in his career and what they were trying to achieve to this film. With this film, that helps you, like, it really helps with the watch because you better understand what you're watching. It really contextualizes it for you. There's awesome material in there. So if you're interested in this film, I highly recommend you pick up a physical release because I believe that those featurettes are on all the standard kind of like physical releases. Like I think they're on the Blu-ray too, and I think they're on the extended cut DVD edition as well. There's some couple deleted scenes, which I'm assuming is stuff that is added into the extended cut. So I didn't watch those too carefully because I want to compare what it's like to have that stuff in the film all together as one piece rather than just talking about a couple bits and bobs here and there that aren't contextualized. And then there's director's commentary, which is fantastic. And I'm going to talk about the director's commentary, I think, as I talk about the film, because I learned a ton about the film from the director's commentary. So revisiting this movie, it's so good. If you have not seen this film, like if you're new to Hong Kong cinema, or if you're new to Chow Yun-fat, or you just weren't around at that time, or you're watching different types of movies, definitely go and see this movie. I didn't remember anything about, like, I really didn't remember anything about this movie. And I loved it. I loved revisiting it. It's so fun. It's so well done. And I think what really, really struck me is the fact that, you know, and I'll talk about Antoine Fuqua's commentary, but like immediately upon watching this film, you see that it is made by someone who loves Chow Yun-fat, who loves Hong Kong cinema, who loves the killer especially, and is trying to do right by that legacy by making a Hollywood film that pays respect and homage to the films that made Chow Yun-fat this legend. Basically, there are so many clear references to the killer, but not in a way that it's ripping it off. It's not cribbing things from Hong Kong cinema. It's paying respect and homage, and it's done so well. So what's really interesting is that Antoine Fuqua says, I've been pronouncing his name Antoine Fuqua. I don't know why. I guess because it looks French with the Q in it, and it's Fuqua. So Antoine Fuqua says in the director's commentary that he saw the killer not too long before he got a call about this movie, because he did the music video for Dangerous Minds, which is the Michelle Pfeiffer film. I think he did the Coolio music video, and the music video was huge, and it did so much to promote that film that his name started getting out around town, because he basically like brought the audience into the theater through his work on the music video. And he got Michelle Pfeiffer to star in the music video, I believe, which was rare at that time for a movie star to appear in a music video rather than just taking footage from the movie and putting it in there. She actually was in the video. And so, his name kind of got around, and he got a call from John Woo, in addition to John Woo's producing partner. And they said to him, there's this movie we want to talk to you about. The script is called The Replacement Killers. Do you know who Chow Yun-fat is? And he had just seen the killer, and he said he was like obsessed with the killer. And he like called his dad and talked to him about the killer and was like, you should see this movie. You'll really love it and all this stuff. And he's like, are you kidding me? Like, of course I know who Chow Yun-fat is. I just watched the killer. Like, he was so stoked to be brought onto this project, and he met with Chow Yun-fat. And they got along really, really well. And he talks about how respectful and humble and kind Chow Yun-fat was, and how that both of them kind of see cinema in very balletic terms, in that it's a dance and it's a movement and it's motion, and it's taking the audience on a dramatic and engaging journey through those things. And you can really see that in this film. And I can talk about that more a little bit down the line, but just so, like, going right into this, like I said, I noticed within the very first scene, this is made by someone who loves these films and respects these films. This is a film for fans of Hong Kong cinema, but who are perhaps like American fans, and maybe as a gateway drug into the rest of Hong Kong cinema, or maybe as a film for people who already know these films and want to see something that kind of continues that tradition, but that is American. And it is interesting that Antoine Fuqua talks about how Chow Yun-fat used to call him at like all hours of the night during pre-production and be like, what if I did this with my character? What if I did this? And a lot of the ideas that he had were actually kind of funny. And Antoine Fuqua balked at the funny ideas because he didn't think that an American audience would accept the tone of a Hong Kong film, where you can have silliness next to like intense violence and really harrowing situations. And so it's really interesting to hear that kind of dance that they had back and forth of things that were suggested that didn't make it into the film. So if you're unfamiliar with the movie, it's pretty simple. Chow Yun-fat he owes a debt to a gangster, Chinese gangster, who is in Los Angeles. And so he kills people for him. He's basically like a hitman. And Antoine Fuqua said he read the script, and he saw an opportunity to kind of create the killer for American audiences, right? So you can see that he's really, really trying to do right by this lineage and these films and make his own version of them. And you see that a lot in this movie, as I said before. But so you have this character who's a contract killer, and he refuses to do a job. And the setup is, and there's a tiny spoiler here, he is told to kill the Michael Rooker character, who is a detective, and he refuses, not because he doesn't want to kill the detective, but because the detective has a son, and he doesn't want to leave the son without a father. And so he becomes hunted by this gangster, and he has a mom and a sister in Shanghai, and he knows that the gangster knows where they are and can get to them. So he needs to get to them first, and so he needs papers to get out of the U.S. So he goes to the Mira Sorvino character, who is a document forger, basically. And they're at odds with one another right away. Like I'm not going to spoil the whole plot for you, but some stuff happens, and they kind of become not really enemies, but they don't like each other. But he needs her, and they come to like each other, and this tremendous mutual respect grows over the course of the film. One of the things that I loved about this movie, now if you're not familiar, when this movie came out, it was heavily criticized for basically like there's not enough plot, is what the American film critics said. Like, where's the story? It's just like action and character stuff. And like, to me, an enormous strength of this movie is there's not a lot of plot. And Antoine Fuqua actually talks in the commentary about how the script was a lot longer originally. It had tons and tons of dialogue in it. And he thought that didn't really work. Not only because Chow Yun-fat was still learning English and maybe wasn't necessarily totally comfortable with like huge monologues and stuff, but maybe more importantly because he saw something in Chow Yun-fat that was a power and a grace in silence. And he talks about Clint Eastwood and the Sergio Leone films, and how he and Chow Yun-fat went through the script together and took out tons of the dialogue and found ways for the character to articulate himself differently. And there's one monologue in this film that's really stunning and incredibly well delivered. It's a really great scene. And to have that one monologue versus like 10 monologues really increases the power of that one monologue. But I think that the focus on character here is really fantastic. And the thing that this movie honestly kind of reminded me of was Michael Mann. Because when you watch a Michael Mann film, there's so much going on that you might not pick up on straight away, or that if you haven't seen a ton of his movies, if you don't know what he's doing. Like the first time I saw Heat, I didn't get how deep those characters are. And then you see Michael Mann talking about, like, you know, when they did the diner scene with Pacino and De Niro and all the dynamics that are happening unspoken between the characters. And that's really important in this film. There are so many unspoken dynamics between the characters. And the acting is so strong, especially Michael Rooker, Chow Yun-fat, and Mira Sorvino. They can articulate so much with their faces and through their body language that you don't need to speak a lot, right? So you can see a film critic going into this movie and they're like, oh, we're going to get like a twisty kind of complicated plot-heavy thriller, and it's not that at all. It's a very simple plot because the movie is not about plot. This movie is about character. It is a pure character-driven film, and in that respect, again, reminds me a lot of those Hong Kong heroic bloodshed films. But I loved revisiting this movie. I thought it was so well done. I think the acting is phenomenal. I also learned actually on the knockoff, the 88 Films knockoff Blu-ray, which is right here. Mike Leader was on set for that film, and he talks about how Mira Sorvino was in Hong Kong at the time, and she visited Paul Sorvino, her dad, who's in that movie. She speaks Mandarin, and she lived in Beijing, and she studied, I think, Asian languages or something at Harvard. And so she went to Hong Kong, and she talked to Chow Yun-fat about potentially being in a film with him. And she talked a little bit of Mandarin, and I guess Chow Yun-fat is known for his having heavily accented Mandarin, but they talked about maybe like if they couldn't make it work with the Replacement Killers, they could do a film in Mandarin or something like that. But Antoine Fuqua talks about how she was in what's that movie called, Mimic. If you've seen the Replacement Killers, her voice is very deep and husky in that film, and her character, I think, is incredibly well done. She kind of reminds me of Sarah Connor in that she does not take shit from anybody, like Terminator 2 Sarah Connor. And like, she is not like a hapless female victim who is there to provide like eye candy and a romantic attraction for the lead, because she and Chow Yun-fat really don't have romance. They have this intense, very deep respect for one another, which is another thing that I liked about this movie. And her character is very strong, very intelligent. She plays it really, really well, and she plays it with this total fuck you attitude that really reminded me of Sarah Connor in Terminator 2. But she had done voiceover, like ADR stuff for Mimic, the horror film that she was in, and she did a lot of screaming for that. So when she first met Antoine Fuqua, her voice was shot, and he's like, that's kind of cool, that works really well for your character. So she like had, because if you've heard her normal speaking voice, it's nothing like how she talks in this movie. She maintained that deep, husky, kind of almost like confrontational vocal delivery that had come about because she blew her voice out screaming, doing the voiceover or the ADR for Mimic. So I thought that was really interesting little tidbit there. But I think she brings a tremendous amount to this film. She has a lot of presence, and she is a great opposite number to Chow Yun-fat. And as you know, him being such an incredible actor and such a strong screen presence, it's not easy to play opposite him. So and Michael Rooker too, I think, does I can't overemphasize how great those three are in this film. So there's some other stuff that I wrote down here about the commentary that I just thought was so cool. Like Tarantino was on the set a lot because he was dating Mira Sorvino at the time, and he was a huge Chow Yun-fat fan. So he would come and just like hang out. Antoine Fuqua actually also talks about how Mira Sorvino and Chow Yun-fat, there was a lot of tension between them on set at times because throughout a lot of the movie, they're antagonists to one another. And they're so serious about acting, and they're so good at acting that it would be uncomfortable to be around them because they were inhabiting that space of being antagonists. And there's like one scene where she puts a gun to his head and then he holds her down and puts a gun to her, and they were both like really playing it, and it was like kind of intense and uncomfortable to be on the set that day. Apparently, like, they were holding the guns against each other's temples, and there were like marks, and like you can see them when you rewatch that scene, knowing that you can see that they're uncomfortable. It's a very physical scene, but it comes across so well in the film. And there's just so much interesting stuff in this commentary. Antoine Fuqua talks about how there were a couple shots he really loved of Chow Yun-fat that he thought added a lot of emotion and spirituality and character to the film that were cut for pacing, which he found really annoying because he feels as though audiences really want those moments of character and almost like spirituality and like and inhabiting a space emotionally without saying anything. But the American producer mindset is cut that out, make the movie a little bit shorter, make the movie faster, keep them constantly engaged. So you hear so much interesting stuff from him. The changes to the script that they made, like I said, they deleted a lot of dialogue. It was originally going to be set in New York City, but that was canceled for kind of three reasons. One, Antoine Fuqua knew that there were a ton of great locations in downtown LA that were never used. Downtown LA at that time in the 90s was kind of like not, it was, he calls it a ghost town. Like it was kind of dangerous, and like a lot of the buildings were vacant, and there was all this great architecture from the 20s and 30s that was just sitting there unused. And you see that a lot in Fincher's films from the 90s too, especially Seven. Then this movie kind of reminds me of Seven in the way that it shoots downtown LA and using that architecture a lot and stuff like that too. And he talks about how he really likes to find interesting locations with cool and unique architecture and spaces, because he thinks that really adds to the film. And I totally agree with that. The Silent Strength, like I said, they were going to shoot in New York, like I said, but it was hard to control New York City because there's so many more crowded areas there. It was really expensive. LA's actually was a lot cheaper at the time. And also, he says, he didn't want to go into detail, but they couldn't shoot in Chinatown in New York because of, I think he uses the word organized crime or something like that. So I'm guessing the triads were, there was something there that didn't quite work out. But that was a pretty interesting a very political way of him to go about talking about that. But, and another thing that was cut out was the character's backstory. There was originally this big backstory about how Chow Yun-fat's character's father was a soldier for Mao, communist soldier, and that Chow Yun-fat was conscripted into the military too, and the father really wanted to get his family out of Shanghai and out of China to safety in the States, so he made a deal with this gangster, who's played by Kenneth Tsang, to get the family to the U.S., but first the Chow Yun-fat character had to basically pay a debt to him, which was going and killing people. And the movie was going to be released after the handover. And so the studio's contacts in Hong Kong were basically like, you got to take this stuff out. Like, it's not going to fly with the Chinese. You can't have stuff about communism and life being bad in China and wanting to get out, and like Mao and stuff like that. So that's kind of an interesting historical little tidbit too. And like I said, I'm just conferring with my notes because I want to make sure I cover all the stuff that I thought was really great about this. But yeah, and Till Schweiger, this is a funny little tidbit, and then I'll leave you. Antoine Fuqua says that Till Schweiger was the funniest person on the set. It was like just ridiculous. It would be like, what if in this scene, he like imitates him using his German accent, like, what if in this scene I'm holding my baby while I'm shooting everyone? Like, he would just like, and like no one knew whether he was serious or not, and he would just make like the most ridiculous suggestions anyone had ever heard. It seems like it was a really fun set, and that everyone really liked each other, and they're still friends to this day. And it was a joy to revisit this film, but also to visit the context of the film and to learn so much from the director and stuff like that. So the film is The Replacement Killers. Like I said, I have the extended cut Blu-ray in the mail. I will do a video comparing picture quality and stuff, but also the different versions of the film. My name is Will. This is Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. I thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.